The air in the hearing room trembles before the words even finish leaving his mouth. "That's a lie, Representative." Bill Barr's voice lashes out, thick with entitlement and disbelief. Every head turns. Cameras zoom in, catching the flicker of anger in his face. The certainty of a man who's been protected by power his entire life. The silence that follows is sharp enough to cut. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett doesn't blink. She doesn't raise her voice. Her expression is carved from calm. With a single deliberate motion, she slides a folder across the table. The faint scrape of paper against wood sounds louder than his outburst. Her eyes stay locked on his, steady, unbothered, almost surgical in their precision. The gavel slams once, echoing like thunder against marble. Order is demanded, but order no longer belongs to him. Barr leans back, forcing a laugh that doesn't land. He glances toward the cameras, searching for allies in the press row, trying to reclaim the moment. But it's gone. The power he once commanded now trembles between them, exposed under the lights. Jasmine remains still. The folder sits open now, a quiet threat resting between them. Its edges glint under the fluorescent light. Barr's smirk falters. He's been in this room before, faced accusations before, but never like this. Never against someone who doesn't flinch, who doesn't need to shout to be heard. The weight of years hangs in the air, the old guard against the new truth-teller, arrogance against discipline. Barr built a career on speaking over others. Crockett has mastered the art of speaking only when it matters most. Around them, staffers shift uneasily, unsure whether to intervene or just witness history being rewritten. She exhales once, slow and measured. Barr tries to interrupt again, but his words stumble this time, caught between defensiveness and fear. She opens the folder fully, revealing pages lined with signatures, dates, contradictions that glimmer like exposed wire. The quiet stretches long enough for everyone in the room to sense what's coming next. The power dynamic has flipped. Barr knows it. Crockett knows it. And the millions watching will know it soon. Because what she's about to reveal under lights on record, for the nation to see, won't just challenge him. It will end him. But what she was about to reveal, in front of cameras, rolling nationwide, would leave even Barr's defenders speechless. Weeks before the hearing, Barr had been on a media blitz, appearing on every major network, his words carefully rehearsed. He called Crockett's investigation political theater, dismissing months of careful research as nothing more than a performance designed to embarrass him. Each interview, each press release, was a calculated attempt to sway public opinion before the cameras ever caught them in the hearing room. But the more he spoke, the more the narrative began to fracture. The old guard was on defense, and even Barr, with decades of experience shielding powerful figures, could sense the precariousness of his position. By the time the hearing convened, the room felt like a battlefield. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras streamed every angle. Aides whispered across tables, exchanging anxious glances. The tension was palpable. Every motion, every pause, every glance could be magnified, dissected, and replayed across the nation. The stakes extended far beyond personal pride. This was a moment that could redefine how accountability operated in American politics. It wasn't just about Barr's reputation anymore. It was about whether the truth could survive in a system designed to distort it. Every viewer watching the live feed could feel the pressure mounting. Social media feeds lit up with speculation and anticipation. Analysts predicted the outcome, some favoring the seasoned former attorney general, others sensing that Crockett's preparation and composure gave her an edge that could not be underestimated. The nation watched, not just for the drama, but for a test of principle. Could facts still overpower manipulation? Could integrity still challenge entrenched power? Crockett herself carried the weight of that possibility. She understood that failure here would resonate far beyond the hearing room. If she stumbled, if Barr succeeded in framing her as overzealous or partisan, it wouldn't just be a personal loss. It would send a chilling message to every advocate, lawyer, and elected official who relied on evidence over spectacle. It would whisper that courage could be silenced, that speaking truth to power was a risk too dangerous to take. But the confidence Crockett displayed was not born of naivety. It was built on meticulous preparation, on decades of navigating systems stacked against her. on the knowledge that every fact, every detail, every carefully documented claim she brought to the table mattered. And as the hearing progressed, the tension between Barr's fear of exposure and Crockett's unwavering resolve became unmistakable, stretching the air taut with anticipation. Because if Crockett failed here, every truth-teller after her would think twice before speaking up. The nation hung in the balance, caught between a fading empire of entitlement and the steady rise of a new generation unwilling to be silenced. Before we see how she dismantled him piece by piece, we have to understand the man behind the smirk. Bill Barr's career was built on mastery of survival in the highest corridors of power. Time and again, he navigated scandals, controversy, and public scrutiny with a practiced ease that made him seem untouchable. Missteps that would have ended the careers of others became opportunities for him to reinvent himself. Polishing his reputation with each recalibration, in every chapter, Barr transformed challenges into leverage, showing an uncanny ability to turn loyalty into currency and truth into a negotiation he could control. From the early days in government, Barr learned that appearances were as vital as action. A carefully timed smirk at a press conference, a measured pause in testimony, a deliberate deflection to reporters' questions all were tools in a larger strategy. He cultivated a persona of respectability, the kind that suggested wisdom, authority, and inevitability. Critics were often met with the quiet, almost imperceptible mechanisms of dismissal, a subtle eyebrow raise, a wry smile, the sense that questioning him was a mistake. Barr understood that confidence could speak louder than evidence, that intimidation and reputation could close debates before words were even exchanged. Throughout decades in the public eye, he perfected what some called strategic ambiguity. Answers were never wrong, yet never fully correct either. He created space for interpretation that favored himself, leaving opponents trapped in a web of nuance they could not navigate. A journalist's question became a lesson in restraint. A congressional query became an exercise in patience, leaving most challengers exhausted, frustrated, or complicit in their own discredit. His mastery of this game allowed him to rise, retreat, and return again, often emerging stronger than before, leaving a trail of confused observers and careful allies in his wake. Barr also learned the power of intimidation in subtler forms. He built networks of influence in law, politics, and media, surrounding himself with voices that could amplify his narrative and silence dissent. Loyalty became a weapon. Friends were rewarded with opportunity. Critics were sidelined with quiet efficiency. Over time, a pattern emerged. Barr's path was not merely survival. It was dominance within the structure he understood better than almost anyone else. Yet for all his calculated confidence, there was a consistent underestimation of those who did not respond to intimidation in kind. Barr had faced critics before, but almost none refused to be framed by his rules. He believed in hierarchy, in respect earned through proximity to power, and in the inevitability of deference. Those outside his traditional spheres, especially young, determined voices challenging his authority, were often dismissed before they could demonstrate their strength. He underestimated the quiet ferocity of preparation, the resilience forged in struggle rather than privilege, the public image he maintained a composed, almost untouchable arbiter of justice, belied the fact that each of his moves was calculated to maintain control. Every press appearance, every statement in hearings, every nuance in testimony reinforced the notion that Barr could outmaneuver, outthink, and outlast almost anyone. But this carefully constructed armor was never tested against someone whose power came not from position, but from principle. Not from fear, but from courage. Not from history, but from relentless preparation. For decades, Barr's strategy had worked. He could talk over opponents, sidestep evidence, and rely on institutional inertia to protect him. He was the embodiment of institutional arrogance, confident that his pedigree, his connections, and his reputation created an untouchable shield. Yet in the quiet corners of the hearing room, amid papers, cameras, and anticipation, that shield had yet to meet its match. But what Barr didn't count on was that his opponent wasn't just ready. She'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. Jasmine Crockett's path to this hearing was anything but ordinary. Born into a world that often questioned her worth and underestimated her voice, she grew up navigating systems that were designed to overlook people like her. Early on, she learned that frustration could be transformed into action, that indignation could become purpose, and that every obstacle presented an opportunity to fight not just for herself, but for everyone denied justice. She didn't inherit power. She built it piece by piece, with determination that could not be taught or bought. From the first cases she took on as a young attorney, Crockett immersed herself in the struggles of others. She defended clients abandoned by the system, representing people society labeled as insignificant or unworthy. Her days were long, her nights longer, spent poring over case law, memorizing precedents, and preparing arguments that could withstand the sharpest attacks. While others rested, she studied, learning not only the law, but how to navigate the currents of human bias and institutional indifference. Each victory, each small triumph, was a brick in a foundation she was building for moments like this, moments when courage and preparation would collide with arrogance and entitlement. Her journey was marked by coded insults and microaggressions, the kind designed to make her second-guess herself without ever leaving evidence. She faced dismissals veiled as advice, assumptions cloaked in civility, and condescension that flowed beneath the radar of casual observers. And yet, she never faltered. Where many would have reacted with frustration, she responded with calm precision. Where many would have shouted, she listened. Where many would have been intimidated, she analyzed. Each slight, each moment of doubt cast by others, strengthened her resolve. It was in these moments, forged in quiet fire, that her identity as a truth-teller took shape. Crockett's activism was not an abstract ideal. It was tangible, lived, and relentless. She organized communities, advocated for policy reform, and stood in courtrooms when others feared to step foot. Every interaction with clients, colleagues, and even opponents honed a rare combination of empathy and intellect. She learned to see both the law and the people it affected, understanding that justice was not simply a matter of procedure, but a reflection of society's willingness to confront itself honestly. These experiences shaped a leader who could wield both knowledge and compassion as weapons of influence, quietly yet powerfully reshaping the terrain around her. The contrast between her and Barr could not have been starker, where he cultivated authority through inheritance, connections, and calculated survival. She built credibility through struggle, service, and unflinching integrity. Where he relied on fear, she relied on preparation. Where he spoke over others, she had learned to listen first, to understand the weaknesses in the system and exploit them not with arrogance, but with undeniable logic and humanity. Her strength was subtle, almost invisible until the right moment arrived, like a storm gathering silently before it breaks. Every sacrifice she had, made long nights, personal hardships, relentless work had prepared her for the confrontation waiting in that hearing room. Every principle she had defended, every instance of speaking truth against indifference, had sharpened her instincts, teaching her how to remain composed under pressure. Her courage was not performative. It was practical. It was tested, honed, and unbreakable. By the time the cameras focused on her, by the time Barr's voice rose to call her a liar, Crockett was ready. She carried not just documents or evidence, but a lifetime of preparation, a deep well of empathy, and an unshakable commitment to truth. Every glance, every movement, every measured breath was informed by years of experience and sacrifice. She was not intimidated. She was inevitable. And when Barr called her a liar, he didn't just challenge her words, he awakened every part of her that refused to stay silent. The chamber felt heavier with every passing second, charged with anticipation and the unspoken knowledge that something monumental was unfolding. Barr leaned back in his chair, the corners of his mouth twitching into a smug half-smile. As if the weight of the cameras and the public eye would bend in his favor, his voice rose, clipped and controlled, dismissing the evidence Crockett had presented as misinterpreted and taken out of context. He gestured toward the stack of documents, as though by waving them aside he could erase their significance. The old confidence, The arrogance, honed over decades, radiated from him like heat from a furnace. Crockett remained still. For a beat, the room held its breath. Journalists adjusted lenses. Aides leaned forward, fingers hovering over notebooks, the faint scratch of pens marking the rhythm of tension. Her eyes were fixed, calm and unwavering, absorbing every word, every flinch, every attempt at intimidation. And then, with a quiet decisiveness that contrasted sharply with Barr's theatrics, she began. Point by point, she dismantled each assertion, each claim, each attempt to spin reality in his favor. Her voice did not tremble, did not rush, did not plead. It cut through the tension with measured precision, exposing contradictions that had been buried under years of political maneuvering. Gasps punctuated her arguments, subtle but unmistakable. Papers shuffled nervously on both sides of the aisle. Observers leaned forward, some unconsciously, as if drawn by the gravity of the moment. The air itself seemed to tighten around them, every movement magnified in the charged atmosphere. Barr's face shifted, the first cracks appearing in his practiced composure. His hands twitched on the table, as though eager to reclaim control, yet unsure how to do so without betraying vulnerability. He interrupted again, sharper this time, a slight edge of panic slipping into his tone. "You're misrepresenting my record." His words, once a weapon of certainty, now felt reactive, defensive, even flustered. Crockett did not respond with anger or condescension. She leaned in, calm and deliberate, letting her next words carry the full weight of evidence and inevitability. "Then you'll have no problem with me reading your own emails." Her phrasing was simple, unadorned, yet lethal. It forced the room to pause, to recognize that the confrontation had shifted from argument to reckoning. Every detail mattered. Each page she cited, each reference she made, was a scalpel cutting through decades of manufactured authority. The rhythm of the exchange heightened the suspense, like the tightening notes of a symphony building toward its climax. Barr's attempts to regain dominance faltered against her relentless logic, her unwavering presence, and the undeniable proof she had methodically prepared. The chamber, once dominated by his confidence, now reverberated with the quiet shock of realization. With every rebuttal, every calmly delivered correction, the imbalance grew more apparent. Barr's smirk faltered, his gestures grew erratic, his composure strained under scrutiny. Crockett's poise remained unshaken, a testament to preparation and principle. The room, the cameras, the nation watching the entire theater of accountability was drawn inexorably into the force of her methodical dismantling. And then, in that perfect pause, the tension reached its apex. Every eye fixed on her, every breath caught, every expectation suspended. The next sentence out of her mouth didn't just end the argument tip, rewrote the narrative of the entire hearing. Crockett lifted the folder with a deliberate calm, the edges of the papers crisp under the bright lights of the hearing room. She did not rush. She did not flinch. Her movements were measured, controlled, almost ceremonial in their precision. When she opened it, the pages inside were ordinary on the surface-typed text. Dates, signatures, but their contents carried a weight that would make the room collectively inhale. It was an internal memo, one that directly contradicted Barr's repeated public statements. The evidence was irrefutable, meticulously documented, impossible to misinterpret. She did not wave it in triumph. She did not pause for dramatic effect. She simply began, voice steady, eyes scanning the text before her, letting each fact land with quiet certainty. "You said you never intervened," she began. Her tone even, controlled, precise, yet this memo signed by you says otherwise. The sentence hung in the air, simple but devastating. Every word echoing in the chamber like a chisel striking stone. Barr's composure faltered almost imperceptibly. His jaw tightened, then loosened, and his hand twitched against the table. He had faced pressure before, confronted allegations. Yet nothing in his career had prepared him for this combination of evidence and poise. He stammered, searching for a foothold. A line that could deflect or minimize the damage, but every syllable came out weaker than intended. His mask of authority began to slip, revealing the uncertainty that Crockett had been quietly building toward for the entire hearing. Around them, the room responded. Staffers glanced at each other nervously, shifting in their seats, some reaching for phones or notes, as though documenting the unraveling in real time. Reporters typed furiously, live updates flashing across screens and social media feeds. The velocity of the information striking faster than anyone could process. Observers leaned forward, some exhaling slowly, others holding their breath, sensing the significance of what was unfolding. Even Barr's allies, the ones who had believed in his control, exchanged subtle, uneasy glances. Crockett's rhythm was methodical. She traced each contradiction with care, connecting points across the memo, highlighting inconsistencies in statements he had made in public appearances. Every reference was deliberate, every pause intentional, allowing the weight of fact to land on those who had relied on Barr's reputation for certainty. "Here," she said, indicating a line on the page, "you stated one thing publicly. Here," moving her finger down the column, "your own memo tells another story. The two cannot coexist." The juxtaposition was surgical, dismantling decades of cultivated authority in minutes. The tension in the chamber became almost tangible. Barr opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated. He tried to regain the narrative, attempted to reassert dominance. But the evidence had already eclipsed the performance he relied upon. His words stumbled against the clarity of fact. His gestures became erratic, his confidence visibly eroding under Crockett's composed scrutiny. The room was silent, but for the rustle of papers and the occasional cough, each breath felt amplified, every minor movement magnified by the sheer weight of the revelation. Crockett allowed the moment to expand, letting the silence underscore the impact. She did not revel in it. She did not mock. Instead, she calmly connected the dots, showing line by line, paragraph by paragraph, that the very man who had positioned himself as the arbiter of truth had been contradicted by his own words. The pace she employed, the measured cadence, the brief pauses, the rhythm of repetition made it impossible to escape the magnitude of the contradictions. Finally, she looked directly toward him, her voice quiet but resolute, carrying authority that needed no amplification. "Accountability isn't partisan. It's overdue." The statement was simple, yet it resonated with everyone in the room, crystallizing the entire confrontation in a single, unassailable truth. The weight of years of preparation, of quiet perseverance, landed fully on Barr. And for the first time, there was no escape from the consequences of his actions. In that moment, the energy of the room shifted irreversibly. The authority Barr had wielded so confidently now seemed fragile, contingent, and deeply human. The contrast between arrogance and preparation, between entitlement and principle, was undeniable. The documents spoke, and Barr could only respond with faltering gestures and stammered words, unable to reclaim the narrative. In that instant, truth did not whisper, it roared. The culmination of strategy, intellect, and moral clarity reverberated beyond the walls of the chamber, beyond the cameras, and into the nation watching, riveted. Every pause, every page turned, every line cited had reshaped the balance of power in real time. By the time the hearing adjourned, the internet had already decided who won and who was finished. The moment Crockett's folder snapped open and her words landed, the world outside the hearing room erupted. Within minutes, #Crockett crushed Barr surged across social media platforms, trending not just nationally, but globally. Short clips from the hearing were uploaded, shared, and replayed with lightning speed, each one amplifying her calm authority and the undeniable clarity of the evidence she presented. TikTok feeds flooded with split-screen reactions, commentators dissecting every pause, every line, every deliberate citation. Late-night hosts couldn't resist replaying the exchange, their monologues punctuated by stunned laughter, admiration, and incredulity at how thoroughly she dismantled decades of cultivated authority. Newsrooms scrambled. Journalists revisited Barr's record, combing through old statements, past memos, and prior hearings, searching for context, confirmation, and precedent. Headlines shifted within hours, no longer merely reporting the confrontation but framing it as a watershed moment. Analysts on television panels, some conservative, some liberal, grudgingly acknowledged what millions already knew. Crockett had not just performed a political takedown. She had redefined the narrative of accountability in that room. Terms like the turning point and political courage began appearing in commentary, capturing the essence of a moment that transcended partisan lines. Even those who had once stood in Barr's corner found themselves rethinking allegiances. Allies distanced themselves subtly at first, then more openly as the weight of public attention intensified. Subtle cues, changed statements, delayed tweets. Strategic silence signaled that the political landscape had shifted, that the old guard could no longer assume its dominion. Conservative pundits, many of whom had previously lionized Barr's strategic brilliance, acknowledged in reluctant tones that Crockett had owned the moment, her preparation, poise, and meticulous evidence rendering traditional defenses moot. Across social media, the public's response was equally electric. Millions watched, shared, and commented, their voices echoing a collective recognition that someone had finally articulated what they had been thinking, confronting a figure who had long seemed untouchable. Memes proliferated, not in mockery, but as a form of communal validation, a recognition that the world could change, that courage could be measured in facts, and that integrity could triumph even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The younger generation, in particular, resonated deeply for years. They had witnessed power wielded with impunity, voices silenced by authority, and truths buried beneath spectacle. Crockett's example became a rallying point, a template for how measured preparation and unwavering principle could overcome entrenched systems of control. The momentum didn't stop at online applause. Community organizers, activists, and local leaders began citing the hearing as evidence that speaking truth to power was possible and necessary. Conversations ignited in classrooms, offices, and homes. Podcasts and opinion columns dissected every tactic Crockett had used, analyzing her calm delivery, her strategic pacing, her ability to let evidence speak louder than words. The debate had transformed from a single confrontation into a national lesson in preparation, resilience, and moral courage. By the end of the day, Crockett's performance had become more than a headline. It was a symbol. A generation raised on silence, taught to defer to authority, finally saw what courage looked like with a microphone. The ripple effects extended far beyond the confines of one hearing room. The lesson was clear. Preparation and principle could overturn arrogance, and the quiet power of truth could reverberate louder than any practiced smirk. But viral moments fade unless they stand for something deeper. In the quiet after the storm, the significance of what had unfolded became clear. The confrontation was no longer about a single exchange, a single document, or a single politician's pride. It was about principle, about consistency, and about the enduring power of truth. Truth does not need to shout. It does not need spectacle. It exists in evidence, in clarity, in the patient assembly of facts that cannot be ignored. Crockett's victory was not measured in applause or viral trends alone. It was measured in the quiet, undeniable weight of reality, confronting arrogance. In the hours following the hearing, Crockett reflected on the event in interviews, her composure unwavering. "It's not about winning arguments," she said simply. "It's about protecting facts." The words resonated far beyond the hearing room. They were a reminder that the true currency of accountability is consistency, integrity, and the courage to stand firmly when others would shy away. In a system designed to elevate noise over nuance, to reward spectacle over substance, her approach proved that measured persistence carries a power no theatrics can match. The broader implications became impossible to ignore. Across the country, the event was cited as a moment where generational courage confronted institutional decay, where preparation and principle dismantled years of cultivated authority. It was a cultural inflection point, a vivid demonstration that the new wave of leaders would not be intimidated by the pedigrees or past successes of those who once seemed untouchable. It reminded the public that integrity, once considered fragile in the face of entrenched power, could be formidable, unstoppable even. Observers across social media, news outlets, and local communities began framing the hearing not merely as a political victory, but as a lesson in the enduring importance of moral courage. Millennials and Gen Z viewers, long accustomed to witnessing power wielded without accountability, saw in Crockett's poise and preparation a blueprint for how to confront authority with intelligence and dignity. Activists pointed to her performance as proof that advocacy rooted in facts and empathy could shift narratives, influence perception, and hold even the most insulated figures to account. And yet, it was the emotional resonance that lingered longest. For every person told they were too bold, for every individual cautioned against speaking up or stepping forward, Crockett's composure became proof that grace can still destroy arrogance. The moment reminded millions that courage is not a loud declaration, but a quiet, disciplined resolve that refuses to yield under pressure. It showed that preparation and principle, exercised with calm confidence, could rewrite what was possible in spaces dominated by intimidation and status. By the time the media cycle settled and headlines gave way to analysis, the lesson was clear. Authority does not guarantee credibility, and power does not erase responsibility. The hearing was more than an isolated incident. It was a testament to the enduring value of truth, the necessity of accountability, and the unassailable impact of those willing to speak with precision and principle when others expect compliance. The exchange, preserved in footage and memory, stood as a reminder that systems built to ignore voices can be challenged successfully when knowledge, courage, and integrity align. But even as Barr left the chamber defeated, one question lingered: how many others still think they can outtalk the truth? The hearing room that had once echoed with accusation now resonated with clarity. The man who once called her a liar had been exposed, not by theatrics, but by the unassailable weight of his own words. Every smirk, every attempt at dominance, every carefully rehearsed defense had crumbled under scrutiny. In that space, dignity outlasted deception. Preparation triumphed over arrogance. And truth, quiet, relentless, undeniable, stood victorious. If you believe truth still matters, if you believe calm, courage can change the story, this is your reminder. Moments like these are not just victories for one person, but lessons for everyone who has ever faced a system designed to silence them. Crockett's example proves that courage does not need to shout. It needs only to be precise, unwavering, and principled. Millions watched, millions were inspired, and millions were reminded that the power of facts combined with poise can rewrite narratives and reshape history. The smear was loud. The evidence was louder. And Jasmine Crockett made sure the whole world heard it. Every page she revealed, every line she cited, every pause she commanded became a symbol of accountability and resilience. Her triumph was not just for herself. It was a signal to anyone who has ever been told their voice doesn't matter. A blueprint for how preparation, integrity, and resolve can dismantle even the most formidable facades. Subscribe to Capital Clash for more moments where truth takes center stage, arrogance finally meets its match. Witness the stories that remind us all that preparation beats power, principle beats performance, and relentless courage can change everything.